morning. I've been blown away by the things I've heard. I've got my notebook out here and my pen. I'm particularly looking forward to you, Ranjan, and cleansing. I think that's something that we're all in need of, particularly at this time of year. But first of all,
right,
Ranjan, you and I are training buddies, aren't we? We met here.
Indeed, we are.
So for those people who don't know you, can I ask that you give yourself an introduction?
You want me to do my introduction?
Yes, please. You introduce yourself, Ranjan. Tell us all about you.
Well, I'll try and be as succinct as possible. Well, we've been based in London for about just a couple of years. Before that, I was based for 14 years in the Lake District in Cumbria. My name's Ranjan Amin, and I've been practicing Ayurvedic medicine for about a good 8 to 10 years now. And we've been really part of Ayurvedic living and lifestyle for about 30 years. Actually, it was in my family for a long time. My mum and dad used it for everyday culinary, which is what I hope people will take away today, all those kinds of tips. And really, about 20 years ago, we were well, I personally was experiencing quite a few people in my family passing away. They'd had diabetes. There were 3 in my family, both all women, who passed away with diabetes too. And there was very little I seemed to be able to do. And secondly, I didn't really find information, and I didn't understand really what was happening to my family. Why couldn't I do something for them to help them to get better, to improve their condition, to come out of that awful deterioration that you see day in, day out, instead of wellness and well-being and activity and full of life? And so it really made me think about how I wanted to pursue my life in the next 20, 30 years. And so I went into doing counseling for about 2 years and then moved to Ayurvedic medicine. And so basically, my own personal history of having diabetes too. Last year, I've been fighting it for about 15 years, and it came on me last year. And really the struggle that people go through, that I went through as well. And I think Ayurvedic medicine has helped me to really lift myself. It's very easy to understand how you can apply it in your life, but it is your commitment and your determination. So our own health is in our own hands. So that's the message I want to put forward today, is that wellness and feeling and being well every single day, or feeling good about myself, is going to come from me, inner self, and it's not an external aspect. So I hope that's enough for me.
That was perfect and tied in beautifully with the things that we've been talking about this morning. That's a recurrent theme about how we have to take responsibility for our own health and well-being. And I think certainly, I remember you talking when we were here, Ranjan, about the medications that your grandmother and mother used, and it's a story that I can relate actually to my husband. I went away from the training and I talked about the Ayurvedic medicine, and he asked me what that was, and I said, well, do you remember when you were young and your gran would give you this, or your mum would give you this, and these were natural healing remedies? It's that kind of thing. It's about incorporating things into our foods and herbs and things like that are in our everyday lives that we're so familiar with, and that we can just go and buy almost anywhere, that we sometimes pass over for medications and things prescribed. So I was talking to him about that, and it struck me that your story, so you go back much further than that, really, don't you? Rather than further than 30 years, you go back to childhood, don't you?
I do indeed. You know, I think my parents, as your parents, obviously, I think we're a generation that's come away from natural healing, and we're returning a full circle. Our parents, our grandparents, great-great-grandparents, they actually understood nature much closer than we're doing at this present moment. And they took from nature, and they actually gave a return to the nature. So if we just take a simple thing like food, or if we take, for instance, parsley, you know, we have parsley here. And why do we use parsley? Well, it has good qualities and properties that actually help digestive system. It's the same with mint. These are things that we can actually grow, that's available in this country. And even if we introduce things like what you might call exotic, it's not exotic anymore, it's available every day. Ginger, fresh ginger, powdered ginger, these are very lovely. Properties of these foods are not really known anymore by the present generation and generations of our generations. So basically our parents and grandparents took these qualities, and say for winter they would use a lot of dry ginger like we get in ginger loaves or ginger bread and ginger cakes, and they're always about this time of the year with cinnamon and cardamom, and these are spices that are very warming, and they actually open up different parts of our respiratory system. And also they knew about when it was coming into spring and into summer, you know, they would use plenty of mint, and they would use plenty of like cucumbers and lots of cooling and lots of greens, and they associated the colors of the food with how we would be in terms of our inner self and how it affected the digestive system or the respiratory system. So they were very close to that nature, and somehow in this last 100 years we've come away from it. So, you know, for me, my history is I grew up on it. I was very ill as a young child, maybe from the age of about 4 years old. And my parents gave me a very simple diet. And in Ayurvedic terms, we'd call that like vata. And I had vata condition, which was very thin, lots of inflammation in the kidney, and you know, a little child, and the parents don't understand what to do. You take them to the doctors, and you know, going back, even if we go back 40-50 years, we didn't really have any information that guided our parents or even guided us until the 80s. I think possibly in the 70s and 80s we were demanding more information or researching it ourselves. And I think the internet and obviously Google has made it very easy. People go online and check things very quickly, and it's very accessible. And I think that is very good news for all of us. You might, the other downside is obviously you might be reading the wrong things. They might not suit you. So it's important today, I want people to understand the qualities of food. There's, in Ayurvedic medicine, the whole foundation really is around taste and the qualities of those tastes, and they relate to the 5 elements of nature. So if we look at, say, we first of all have ether, the space, and then we have air, and we're doing that all the time. All of us around the whole world, all human beings are breathing in air, and they are in ether. They're in some level of space, whether it's the space that's between our nostrils or the vocal cords where we hear sound. That's the space that gives us sound. And then also our hearing, it also has quite a lot of ether aspect in there. And so that's one element. And the other is air that we breathe every day, water, which we need, you know, for all the different functions of our body. And these are really vital. We never think of ether as a vital element, and yet it is probably the most important, that really allows a lot of the other elements to function, like your air and water, the fire, which gives us heat and temperature. And then we've also got earth, you know, where we can say that's very grounding, something that's very solid and dense and heavy. So we need a balance of all of those. Now, all of those 5 elements are related to taste, and we have 6 tastes. Now, shall I continue, or are there more questions you want to ask?
Please do. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I'm looking forward to hearing what you've got to say, so please do continue.
Okay, so the 6 tastes are your sweet, sour, salty, and then astringent, bitter, and I always get the last one, pungent. Okay, so these are the 6 tastes, and all of us are really familiar with these, and we're familiar actually with the 5 elements. And Ayurvedic medicine, when you come to us for any treatment, you we get you to sit down and we ask you this question: do you feel cold? Are you feeling sort of very dry inside, or do you feel, what are you feeling? So they'll say, I've got very dry skin, I'm itchy, my hair's been falling out, I've got very dry lips, and my nails are really dry. So that condition will give you an insight. It's Vata development. So all the 5 elements belong to what we call the dosas. So there's Vata, Pitta and Kapha, and all of us have this within us, and these are the 5 elements. It's a combination of the 5 elements. So Vata is what we would say is ether and air. These are the 2 that I've been speaking about, and I really want to concentrate quite a bit on that, because this is what's happening now. Today is solstice, it's the shortest day, we've got a lot of darkness, but as we go from tomorrow, we're going to get lots of light. So there is a whole change taking place that's very, very subtle. And that subtle change affects nature, the 5 elements, and how the 5 elements will work. So all of a sudden, it may go very, very cold in the next few days. And our body then has to adapt to that change. And we're never sure what kind of food we should be eating when that change takes place. So my advice to them, to whoever's listening, if you're in the other side of the hemisphere, which is very hot, we'll give you some tips for that as well in a moment. So those of us who are in the northern hemisphere, then we would be looking to, and particularly in the UK, we have awful weathers in one day sometimes. Yes. What I'm about to say, you have to adapt, to whatever's happening to your locality. So if it's very cold, get the old ginger out, get the fresh ginger out, and make a nice tisane or a fusion of boil it in water and have it as a cup of tea with a bit of cinnamon and a little bit of black pepper, and that will boost. It's like a central heating. It boosts all the heat within our body and calms down the cold so that it doesn't affect the respiratory system. Now, if you're another person who's been, like some of the young people have got hardly any clothes on, where they're sleeveless, or they've got hardly anything on their feet or on their head, and all of a sudden they've caught a cold very badly, and they've got flu virus. So if that's happened to you, then plenty of hydration. Hot drinks are the key. When we feel like this, if we've got fever, definitely we need to heighten the hot drink level. So if you were drinking 1 cup of hot tea, say of ginger and lemon and honey, then we would say you need 4 or 5 of those in the morning within a couple of hours, because that's what's going to boost your vitamin and your minerals within your body. Hydration is key to when I want to get well. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, if I've got heavy mucus that's around my respiratory or catarrh and a very sore throat, peppermint, actually, and yes, my new company is called Peppermint Health. But peppermint is very, very lovely at this time of the year. It's lovely, actually, even in the summer. Mint is a really nice drink. But peppermint, particularly at this time of the year, it has 2 qualities that we don't normally see in one, which is cooling and heating at the same time. So it will do the heating system, and what it'll do is, if we've got a lot of heat in the stomach, which is what happens sometimes when I've got a lot of respiratory mucus or catarrh, is that the gut then becomes very inflammatory and it needs cooling. So the peppermint has these 2 qualities of heating and actually cooling. So it'll heat up the respiratory system and cool down the gut. So that's very lovely. And the other thing that we tend to do with peppermint is to make it into a drink. So that's what I would recommend. So if you have peppermint with ginger, so you can put a little bit of ginger powder. So all of a sudden you've increased all its qualities. So now peppermint has qualities that are to do with space and ether. So often with cold and cough, we've got some sort of sinus problem, blocked up nose. And so peppermint rises upwards and it goes outwards. So it actually has the quality to open up the mind and remove tension and take away that horrible feeling that we have when we've got blocked nose, the tension that builds behind it, or the heaviness that builds behind it. So it releases that. But 1 cup of peppermint tea is not going to be enough. So you're going to have maybe 3 or 4 cups through the day. And it's not about overdoing it either. It's always in moderation. Now, I'd also like to say that there's some people that may never be able to have peppermint tea or ginger because they may be very heating for them. So people who have got the other end, which is excessive vata, where they're very, very thin, the things that I described to you earlier, if they've gone beyond the dryness and they've now got arthritis, or they've got some bone issues, anything to do with like ankylosing spondylitis or rheumatoid arthritis, and if that's quite chronic, they should not go for peppermint. They should stick to turmeric, which is much better, again available in your kitchen. So if you have turmeric powder, make sure you get good quality. Try and get organic. I don't know if you grow it yourself, you can. It grows just like fresh ginger, and you can grow it in the dark, warm area. I mean, we have tendency to grow. My mother always grew ginger in Manchester. And Manchester is very cold and damp. Yeah. So it is possible to actually grow these things yourself, as long as you give some attention. And I think now, living in London, I find that quite a lot of things I couldn't grow in the lakes, I can grow quite easily. I put parsley out and it just springs up, put coriander. And we're trying ginger. We've placed ginger outside, see if that will grow. And so again, these are very easy things that are accessible to all of us, and we can have on a day-to-day basis with our meals. If I don't have turmeric as a drink, you can always add it into your food, but make sure you get good quality and not, cheap. Sometimes the cheap isn't always the answer.
No, and I think more and more we're becoming aware of quality, and supermarkets or local stores are doing much more to promote their organic ranges, and I think so we can find them easier. Yes,
I think it's very readily available. One of the other things I was going to mention is coriander. People have lots of digestive gut issues at this time of the year, so today is a really good day. If you can, you may have all had very good breakfast, and now it's lunchtime, so have your main meal at this time of the day. Have as much as you want in moderation, but if you cut out the bread, anything with yeast, and no tea and coffee for today, and no alcohol, if that's because you're going to have it on Christmas Day or Boxing Day or even Christmas Eve. So if you can manage today without alcohol and any sparkly like soda waters or Coca-Cola, sorry, I shouldn't have said that word. Anything that's sparkly shouldn't be really drunk on this day, because you're likely to get digestive issue followed by maybe flu virus, because it just opens up all the whole change that takes place, whether it's the solstice or equinox at any time of the year. They open up all of our weak areas, open to disease. So, our aim now is to learn how we can really protect ourselves during these seasonal changes and have the most protection during that time. And then as we go on a day-to-day living, we just need to be a little bit aware of what we're taking in. Doesn't mean I have to be obsessed or go the opposite way, don't care. We just need to be a bit moderate on everything and really care about who we are, value ourselves, and value all the people around us. And that way, we will go forward as a human race, caring for each other. And we will grow and move away towards violence, towards peace, and to creating harmonious societies. And that's not present at the moment. And it's not present because I don't know if you saw Black Friday up here. It really was. Black Friday to me appeared to be of greed and real greed. And you could see that when greed, the vice of greed is present, it really demolishes our feeling of kindness and generosity. So I think this year, for Christmas, we will go beyond kindness and generosity to something much deeper inside that says we are peace, and we need to emanate that more and more in our everyday living.
I think that's really important. And I think there were photographs and stories from around the world about Black Friday, absolutely. I know here in the office, we didn't call it that for that reason, that it was about emanating light, emanating good feeling, and so we refused to use that term here. I want to take you back. This is a good opportunity because you mentioned peppermint. Would you like to just tell us a bit about your clinic, tell us about your website, how people can get in touch with you? Because I know you've changed your company name recently, so do you want to give us that information?
Yes, our website isn't up yet, but we've got our other existing, we were called Ayurvedic Health for 14 years. So the Ayurvedic Health .co.uk, people can still access that. If you put Ayurvedic Health, you'll still get to it. Obviously, there's a lot of practitioners now in London, which is great. It's nice to see that Ayurveda at last in London is growing. But we're still only a handful, about 10 to 15 practitioners. And we've now got maybe 3 or 4 health spas that are on the outskirts of London, maybe one in York and one in Hampshire somewhere, and one near Cambridgeshire. So we still haven't, Germany has had 30 years of quite heavy, intense Ayurvedic medicine. They're really much more further in advance than we are. And America's the same. So we've got a lot of catching up to do here in the UK, particularly in London. In terms of peppermint health, we're still, I could say we haven't, we're at the bud stage of the flower. We're nowhere near opening up yet. How we came about to change from Ayurvedic health to peppermint is that I came across Katerina and her company around August, maybe July, about July. And at that time, I'd been struggling with my diabetes, and I had done my diet last year. I'd done my exercises, about 2 hours of walking every day. And really, to pull yourself away from your business to go and do a walk for 2 hours is not part of my routine. But I made sure it was, and I found myself doing more and more part-time work. So 2 things actually happened here. One was that I realized that now I would always be working part-time, and I made that an ethos of my company, that I would now not do my job as a way of earning, but I would do it as a hobby. To maybe next 10 years, I would see this as a hobby that I'm going to grow, passionate about, and really enjoy. And so I changed my attitude to my work completely, that it wasn't going to be about going and working. Time has come where you just have to do something that is helpful to your health. So I decided 2-3 days is what I would work. And in doing that, my health was improving, but not fast enough. It'd been a year and a half, and I was looking for some other way of healing myself, something that was to do with energy, something that was to do with gems. I have, my parents had gems. We've used Ayurvedic principles in our family home. So we had gemstones in our house as well. And, we have like a puja area. Puja area is like a very sacred area where they worship and they pray to the deity every single day. And we had Vishnu. And my mum and dad would have a lovely diamond. It was a real diamond, small, right next to Vishnu. And when I came across Medica Health, I thought, wow, this is a godsend, really. This company has opened up something for me. And all of a sudden, my mind was connecting to areas of their company. I hadn't even met Katharina at that point. I was only reading about the information. There was another company I was also looking at. But anyway, I rang up Katharina and I said, I need a demo. I need to see what your equipment is about and how it will work for me and for Ayurvedic medicine. So I went for a long trail, and that day I was not feeling good. I really didn't want to go. But I ended up in Whaley. Is it Worley? Worley, that's right.
Wally, yeah.
Near Preston. How can I forget? It's a lovely village in the Ribblesdale Valley. So I connected with her, and it was like, as soon as I met Katharina, it was like she got hold of my hand, and I felt like a little girl walking alongside. She's very tall and grandiose, very beautiful and graceful, actually. And immediately I felt as if I was with my mum. And of course, I don't think she would have liked it if she'd heard these things. But anyway, when I got to her practice, it was very, very quick. The experience of Thermojam and the experience of actually having, it was 20 minutes. I had a sapphire that just sat on my crown for about 20 minutes. And then I was drinking quite a lot of water because it was a very hot, sunny day anyway, and I was very thirsty. So she had charged all the water with a vortex. I was absolutely fascinated. I thought I was in Star Trek, movie. I didn't realize in that moment how fantastic and really the momentum change I would make in my life was in this experience. And that 20 minutes of the experience, I had a complete out-of-body angel experience. And I told her that I'd gone to a realm which we know as subtle region where angels are. There's an angelic form of every human being there. It's a very sacred place. And to connect there, the purity inside yourself would be very, very high. And I believe the sapphires helped my whole mindset to be so pure in that moment, to go into that realm. And I think that experience shifted my whole health. It was an enormous experience for me, which I didn't realize at the time. And it has still stayed with me. And I think forever in my life, that particular feeling of lightness, of there's absolute no consciousness of a feeling of worry or pain or hurt or missing someone. You are so steady in your feeling of love and generosity, of peace, of happiness, and it's stable, so stable. And there is a world that we will probably develop that has all of those qualities, because otherwise we wouldn't experience them. If it's not going to happen, we wouldn't be experiencing it now. So anyway, she did the whole treatment, and then I realized I was almost missing my train, so I came. But to cut a very long story short, I bought the equipment myself. I must say that my son was really adamant that I don't do that, buy the equipment. But in the end, we decided I would buy it for me to treat myself. He didn't want to see me with diabetes, and I didn't want to see myself with it. A full-blown diabetes, and it would be very devastating, because once diabetes is in your system and you go chronic, it's very, very difficult, because it hits the heart, it hits the lungs, especially people who've had asthma, history of asthma. It hits the brain, and I've heard people talk about diabetes 3, which is the brain, which is dementia and Alzheimer. We have it very clearly in Ayurvedic medicine. And in fact, we don't have diabetes 1, 2, and 3. In Ayurvedic medicine, we have 21 different types of diabetes. So, they're to do with Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and combinations of that. And there's some diabetes that's never reversible. And most diabetes out of that 21 is reversible. So we decided we'd buy the equipment. It's very easy to use, but it is incredibly advanced technology. You are talking about quantum healing. What I realized is that the way I had worked as an Ayurvedic practitioner, where I used oils, I used my herbs, I used exercise, yoga, food, Diet is our biggest area. So when you come to us and you've got some problem, most of the time we'll have people with pain like arthritis who have come to us. Maybe about 40 patients in this year we've had with diabetes and arthritis. So at this stage, it's not so easy to reverse. People who've, they think they've just been diagnosed with it, but actually it's been going on for 10, 15, 20 years in your body. And so it's not so easy. But if you say, if you're in your 30s and you start to get some pain or gut problem, we have to deal with it there and then. So we have now 20-year-olds with diabetes, and it's full-blown diabetes. So we're now talking about very complicated, large disorders that are happening at a very young age.
Yeah.
That's not so easy to reverse in a year. So for me, being 21 again, so basically being 21 again, I decided that I wanted to stay in that age group for the next 30 years. Yes. And it would mean that this Thermogem equipment had to be with me, and I would use it. And so in the first month, I didn't get a chance to use it on myself at all. I used it on a lot of other friends and family and patients who I knew. They all trialed it first. I didn't charge anyone. And as they trialed it, they were saying what I was saying. It was really familiar to me what they were saying, because I was feeling energy the first time in my life. When you're over your 50 years of age, you lose energy very fast. Unless you've been active, or you've had a trauma, you've come out of it and you start being active. Even then, we seem to have days when there's no energy and you fall flat. Now, younger people say the same. People 30 years younger than myself are saying the same thing. So something terrible is going wrong. And what I realized when I was having my sapphire elation, when the sapphire was over my crown, was that the sapphire energy that's been transmitted through the light and crystal and sound, that therapy is going back to the blueprint of my complete form, how I was before I got any disease, or even before any of the genes of my parents were connecting with me. So it takes you back to your ancient time of your original form, which is something I don't think any medicine is able to do so far. And to go back to that form means that I can have that level of purity, just like when a baby is born. They have a whole range of things we can't imagine. When we grow up, we've just got so much of our day-to-day living, our memories, our past memories, as I was saying, describing earlier, people who've been my mom and dad, now they passed away, 30, 40 years ago. And it's just a past memory. But all of a sudden, the ability to think so clearly and precisely without emotion is a considerable, advancement in the quantum healing. And I think the other aspect that I saw was the energy, the rise in energy. So what happens is that if you have low levels of energy and you're over 40 or 50, and as I said, it can even happen to 20-year-olds. Yeah. The Thermogem is building up. Each week you have your treatment. It's building up your energy. It's building up your cardiovascular adaptation, your hormonal, your psycho-emotional state. It's building it up to a safe level back to the old original blueprint. And then once it's got there, which is where I feel I'm at, then I just do Thermogem. I was doing it, well, for that course that we came to you in, that must have been October, we had to do it 3 times a week.
Yes.
So when I returned, of course, I didn't do it at all. And then because we got very busy, and then November, I was doing twice a week. And this December, I've just managed once a week. Last 10 days, I haven't been, as I said, I had this accident. But the amazing thing was when I actually fell on the floor, somebody had got their scooter out on the bus and I went flying out flat on the floor. I sat there for about 10 minutes thinking, but I don't feel any pain. I didn't feel anything. I walked out, I was limping. And maybe 5 days later, I felt, my bones and the coccyx really giving me some trouble. But that's because I built up that inner strength, that inner level of energy that would not have been available to me. And my diabetes is completely, I think just after Christmas, I'm going for my diabetes test. And I'll let you know what. So far, so good. I'm not even on the borderline. I've been keeping my exercise going. But the Thermogem and the Ayurvedic medicine, when you are using, so the second part of Thermogem is that we have encoders. You've got your vortex there, but the encoder is a small instrument which holds the glass of water, and you put the sapphire underneath it, or you can put the diamond carnelian, which is more for cleansing and energizing. The sapphire is really for the nervous system. I feel, it's really helps the brain to get rid of, detoxes the brain. Now, so that's something we haven't done before. Maybe that's a new program we will do next year, detoxing of the brain, because it definitely collects a lot of toxic waste. But what I found also in the encoding is that they imprint and encode into the water, but they also can do the same in our herbs. So when we're about to give herbs to people, like yesterday we did several liver detoxing, and we put our Gudici is one of the herbs we use, Ayurvedic herb, and the other one is Triphala and Amlika. So we just have maybe a half teaspoon. We put it inside with the water, and we had it on 40 minutes on energizing because we're doing a liver detox. And this morning I rang them all up and they said, wow, we never felt so good. Like one of them had really needed to do a liver detox. And I'd only done the elation, which is the sapphire on the crown, and then the liver detox. And that was it, 20 minutes. And then afterwards, I asked them, they were having it for the first time. It was really all this Christmas, we're doing trials. So basically, because Thermogem and Ayurveda is new, it's a new concept. It is really about the challenges of illness, the challenges of having some sort of disorder. We want to see that as history. So what we will want to see with Ayurvedic medicine and Thermogem is a life that is in my own hands, in my own control, and not so dependent on external health providers. But in my own hands, I can deal with small issues, but my health stays good throughout time. And that I have a mindset that is only stuck on feeling well. That it constantly says, I feel really good. And I don't know what illness is. I must come to a point where I no longer associate illness as an everyday event, but I must associate the feeling of being well every single day. So that mindset is not present, and that is something we have to change. So I find that when you drink this water, that's encoded, or when you give people the herbs that are encoded, that has that image, the qualities of the sapphire in addition to the herbs, then we're moving the whole mindset of that person to a feeling where they will associate good health for a long term. So I think that's the thing. And then today, like we've got solstice. So if you do an MOT today, you take your car in, for goodness sake, come on. Take your car in for an MOT, and it's by law. So I would say create this law. This is a natural law And in fact, I'm not saying it because I want to say it. It's part of a natural law that exists, just like breathing. And that natural law says that you should constrict your food intake, at least 4 to 5 times in a year. So if we do it today, so we all have a really good lunch and don't go overboard, stay off teas and coffees and sparkly drinks and yeasted food, then this evening we should just have soup and no heavy other food. Or we can abstain. When you abstain, you hydrate. So you drink a lot more water. You can have a lot more peppermint. You can have lots of fresh mint tea. You can have lemongrass tea, ginger tea, whatever you feel like, any herbal tea, maybe not a fresh fruit tea, or we have teas like raspberry and that kind. Those are not suitable for nighttime. So any other tea you can have. And by the time you've had all the different waters, coconut water is also very good, you will not feel any different. But in the morning, you'll feel the difference. You'll feel very, very light. And you'll feel you did not, congest your whole gut. When we're eating at night, every night, our digestive system never gets an MOT. It doesn't get the break it needs. So just as my mind needs time out, we take time out to relax, and then also I need to do the same for my gut. I need my whole GIT tract, from my mouth to the coccyx to the anus, to actually not be doing heavy food processing. Yeah. If we just give it one day. So we could do it today and tomorrow, and then that's it. You can go off to your Christmas Eve jollies and whatever you want. And then after Christmas, maybe Boxing Day or 28th of December, you might decide to do the same. If we're looking at the southern hemisphere, where it's very hot, and people are getting into actually no, they're going into their winter, aren't they? Because we're going into longer days from here. They'll be going into shorter days. That's right. So for them, they'll be going from very hot days into cooler days. So I think for them, it would be possibly very similar. And those of the southern side that are going into their summer, they would need to be looking at very cool drinks. Watermelon is very good, for that hot type of heat. So if we think about the elements, which is ether, air, water, fire, and earth. Now all of these have qualities. So if we take ether, the space, and air, they're very similar, these two. Actually, ether is absolutely what we can say immobile. It's very subtle. It's can space be dry and can space be wet? Well, yes. Air is the same. Air can be wet and cold at the same time, and dry. So we can get a very hot, sunny weather with dry air. So when it's like that, you need to hydrate, you need to moisturize, you need to moisten. So the food that I have must be like that. It must be nourishing, moist, and heavy, because the sun is drying and it's very, very, what we can say, heating. So you'd have cooling foods. And it doesn't normally mean salads either. It just means, if we look at, for instance, ginger. Now, if I say like in the heat, we would say you would go towards sweet foods, cooling foods, and maybe colder foods. It doesn't mean we have loads of cakes or sugar. What it means is that the post-digestive quality of the food, for instance, ginger, is sweet. Mm-hmm. If we look at limes and lemons, because these are very easy to get hold of, and we can squeeze them into our drink very easily, or have a slice, particularly at this time of the year, Christmas time all over the world, or festivals. So lemon is quite acidic. Lime is actually quite sweet. Yeah. So the post-digestive effects of these two are very different. So I would say if you have a tendency to get hot and heated, or you're going through your menopause, then lime is very good. Keep lemon out completely, because it also is heating, but it's acidic. And then its final quality is an acid base. So it's not so useful. It's not a sweet. It's actually what we would say not a sour. So lemon, post-digestive effect is sour. So we wouldn't tend to have those. So these qualities are very important, like hot and cold, okay, dry and wet. So when we have these types of qualities of hot and cold, dry, wet, sweet and bitter, and there's about 14 categories like that. If we just stick to these few that people can, you know, recognize and associate with. So we talked a little bit about dry and wet, and we can say air can be, the 5 elements can be any combination of these, and they can increase that or they can decrease. So for instance, say we have the wet quality, you know, which is it gets very wet inside and heavy and damp. Normally we will feel this round, and people in the southern hemisphere may feel this because they've had a lot of cold air and they may be going into the hot summer now. So like we would do round about springtime, where we will experience that heaviness, you know, of the winter, the mucus in our respiratory system, you know, catarrh, sore throats, they're all present. And so what spring means is everything's going to go lighter. There's a lot more rain, there's a lot more air, and there's a lot more light. So what we'd need to do for our inside of our body is to do a light cleanse, because there's a lot of heavy stuff inside. So how do I dry out inside of me, you know? And again, it's going to be the types of food that I use that has the quality of drying. Okay, so we said ginger is one of them. Now, fresh ginger is not something we'll use now. So we would then use fresh, let me see the combinations. We'd use fresh coriander, which is very, very cooling, with dry ginger. Okay, so you can use, so for some people where they've got heavy type of catarrh, you need to have powder. And for most majority of us, we can say in general that we'll use fresh ginger. So you'll have fresh ginger, you'll have coriander seed and fresh coriander, and then you can put a little bit of fennel seed, and you'd boil the whole of that and drink that water, or you can just leave it as an infusion overnight and then drink the water. And so that's how we would move, you know, a heavy congested inside, you know, a gut that's needing to have a cleanse. So these particular herbs are useful in clearing and cleaning the inside. Okay, anything else?
Well, I think that was really, really helpful. So just to recap, Ranjan, I want to now take your advice. I want to detox. I'm going to be very good today. So you said that I should start with peppermint tea. What kind of things should I be doing? Because I'm going to take some notes and I'm going to be good. The people here in the office I'm trying very hard to be good.
You're going to detox from this time of day, are you?
Well, I've been so far reasonably good. I've been reasonably good, but I'm going to, as you said, take a couple of days and do a detox. So help me, Ranjan.
Okay, so I would only advise today, tomorrow, and 23rd, and that's it. No more after that, okay? So just 2-3 days. So one of the things, did you have any tea and coffee today?
No, I haven't had tea and coffee yet.
Okay, so that's very good. But if you did have tea and coffee today, I need you to have 2 to 3 glasses of water, plain mineral water. Make sure it's not tap water. Okay? So that's important to get the hydration. Otherwise, your lunch should be really nice cooked hot meal, which can have preferably no red meat, and maybe white chicken or fish. And those of us who are vegan or vegetarian, we'd go for quinoa or lentils. Mung bean is excellent for doing a detox, especially the split mung bean. So you can make it into a soup. So you start with a little small soup, and you have your main meal, which is greens, vegetables, beetroot is very good, and also fennel bulb, the fresh fennel bulb, if you can get that. So that would be a whole combination. And then you can have one lot of protein, no other carbs. Okay, so that's your detox lunch. And then again, throughout the afternoon, you'd have plenty of either peppermint tea, or you'd have mint tea, fresh mint tea, or you'd have fresh ginger tea, or you'd have fresh lemongrass tea, because lemongrass tea is also very useful for detoxing. And then this evening, again, what you'd need to do is just continue all of those drinks, all coconut water, and not have, but if you feel hungry, then have soup. Okay, any vegetable soups, you can have root and greens, okay, a mixture. But if you use beetroot, if you've had beetroot in the afternoon, then just stick to carrots. So have a nice combination of soups. So the aim of today is to have only 2 meals and miss 1 meal. And if you can have just 1 main meal, that's great as well. So that's all part of it's about eating the right foods, and about hydration. Okay, well, that's what you do for 3 days. Similar foods. And if you do have a cup of coffee, or you're really desperate for one, have a decaf about 4 o'clock.
Okay, I'll make a note. I'm usually very good in relation to those kind of things. I've been trying to kind of avoid those, but I am going to take on board everything you've said. It's been really interesting, Ranjan, and I was delighted to hear what you had to say today. Do you just want to remind us about your clinic and how we can get involved with you, in touch with you if you've got any further questions? So,
yes, please email us on either ranjan@pepperminthealth.london, or you can write to us at info@ayurvedichealth.co.uk. Shall I give them my number?
If you feel comfortable to do so, please do.
I can't remember the number, but anyway, please do email us. You can, send not to text, but you can definitely send an email. I think that's probably a good way people can connect with us. Oh yes, the phone number is 0203 691 6577. So I had to look it up.
I'm the same. I also noticed on your website, Ranjan, you have a contact. You have the possibility for someone to fill in their details and leave a contact form. So did you just want to remind us of the email address?
Yes, it's info@ayurvedichealth.co.uk.
Thank you so much, Ranjan. I've really enjoyed speaking with you. We're going to hand over.